It's Tuesday. This is our first new show of the week. We did not have a new show last night because on Sunday, my wife gave birth to our first baby, everybody. Thank you. And thank you very much. But really, it was mostly her. The baby came 2 weeks early, so on Sunday we really were not expecting this to happen. We had gone out for brunch. We'd walked home from brunch. We were sitting around the apartment. We're getting ready to go see a play at 2 o'clock on Sunday. And basically around 11:30, 12, my wife about every 10, 12 minutes would say her back hurt, and I would go, rub her back. And I'm bad at recognizing patterns, or else I would have known that those were contractions. So anyways, once we realized that's what it was, I downloaded an app, a contractions app, because I'm on top of it. And so we were sort of charting it, and they were speeding up pretty quickly, and my wife was in a good amount of discomfort. And so we were talking to the doctor, and eventually they said to us, the doctor said, yeah, maybe now would be a good time to go in. And so I was helping my wife get changed, and while I was helping her get changed, her water broke. And wow. I mean, it sounds like what water would sound like if it broke. It's like incredibly well named for what it is. And so again, you're trying to keep it together, and we get her packed up, and we go, and we get down to the lobby of our building, and I have to say about our doorman, just fantastic. You could tell our doorman has been through this before. There have been flustered husbands coming down with very pregnant women on their way to the hospital, and he just patted me on the back, firm handshake, grabbed our bags, and then walked us outside to get in the car. I could tell that he had done this hundreds of times. I could tell from the expression on our Uber driver's face that this was the first time that he was doing anything like this. And because when you're an Uber driver and you see this, what we were is the opposite of jackpot. This is, and but I will say to Tariq, he did an incredible job. He kept his cool so well, because it was hard to keep your cool because one, obviously we wanted to get there in a hurry, and two, my wife was on her knees in the back seat, holding on to me. We had to roll the window down because she was getting car sick, and she was just screaming out an open window. Screaming. And only in New York City could you drive that way and not have people say, that woman's being abducted. There is abduction taking place right now. Because she would be screaming while we were stopped at like stoplights, and people were just like crossing the street. And my wife was screaming out the window, I don't like this. And I just feel like New Yorkers are walking by going like, it's New York, nobody likes anything. So we get to the hospital, and I just want to say again to Tariq, who is lost to me, there's no way to contact him. I just want to say my only regret is that you can't give an Uber driver 6 stars because you deserved it. I also want to say I regret that we used my Uber app instead of my wife's because I'm pretty sure Tariq gave us the 1 star, and that goes on my record. So we get inside and we walk upstairs and we get into the admitting, and it's Easter Sunday, and every nurse was wearing bunny ears, which was fantastic and it just immediately put me in the best mood. It did not affect my wife's mood. My wife was at a place where bunny ears could not change her mood. And I even said, look, bunny ears, and she was like, shut the up. Don't stop pointing, don't ever point another thing out to me for a decade. So we walk and we get in, and it turned out my wife, we had just kind of like missed the start of this. My wife was fully dilated when we got to the hospital, and so just immediately sort of got up into the stirrups, and our doctors were there, and we just kind of went to work. And it was weird because I didn't know how much I would watch everything going down. I didn't have a plan this time, but the minute it started, I couldn't take my eyes off it. It's the most fantastic thing. I was so taken. It was the best. And I also couldn't stop laughing. And I couldn't stop laughing for one reason. One, half the people in the room had bunny ears on. And the other thing was I kept laughing because I kept thinking back to the last few months, the amount of times people had said to me, "Are you ready for this?" And watching it happen, I couldn't help but laughing at, like, who could be ready for this? Like, what can you do to prepare for what you're seeing right now? It's like, oh yeah, we're totally ready for this day. The last month we've been just driving Ubers around Manhattan while we scream out the window, so that wasn't weird at all. And then we've like been pulling baby dolls through a keyhole, so now I know what that looks like. So that wasn't weird either. And, the other thing, my wife, no drugs at all. No drugs. Absolute incredible, yeah. I was trying to score some for myself and just got shut down. And then, our son was delivered. My wife delivered our son, and it's just this crazy moment where I then exploded into laughing and sobbing at the same time. And so we had our son. We named our son Ash, which is my wife's maiden name. And I can't picture a better way to honor what my wife did than naming him after her. The middle name is Olsen, which is my mother's maiden name. And it just, to be able to name him after those two women. A couple of people have said to us, Ash Olsen, do you think people will think you named it after Ashley Olsen? And to them, I have said, no one will think that. Because I've long been a Mary Kate guy. But somebody's like, oh, Ash Olsen, did you name it after Ashley Olsen? Yes. That's what I did. But it's crazy. And then, and again, I realize that any parent who's watching this has gone through this, and you must all just wait for people who aren't parents to have this moment and then go, see, we told you, isn't it? But the weirdest thing is you're just not a parent, and then you are. And your brain doesn't it takes your brain a couple hours to catch up to that. And the way that was the most clearly defined to me was I was filling out paperwork just like 2 hours later while Alexi and Ash were sleeping, and it asked for the mother's name, so I filled out my wife's information, and then it said father's name, and I started filling out my wife's father's name. Because I thought that's what they meant. So I'm writing Tom Ash, and then it says father's phone number, and I'm thinking, who knows their father-in-law's phone number? And then I realized, oh, I'm the father. I am now the father of record. Yeah, what a day. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank our doctors, Dr. Yale and Dr. Romoff, the incredible staff at Lenox Hill, Lisa, our nurses who's were wearing the bunny ears. I don't know all your names, but I feel like there was a Lisa, an Anna, a Lauren, a Cottontail. I want Tariq. One more shout out to Tariq, everybody. This close. You don't know how close you were to having a baby born in your Uber, and how close I was to having an Ash Tariq Myers. Because you would have deserved that. I also want to thank Timothy Oliphant, Tracy Ellis Ross, and Run River North. They were supposed to be our guests last night. We'll have them back on. Also to our audience that had tickets for last night's show, who obviously we had to cancel last minute. We apologize. Please, we'll figure out a time for you to come back. But last but not least, I want to thank my incredible wife, Alexi, for her, the work she did this weekend. I'm so lucky. And thank you all. Guys, usually I come to work at 9 in the morning. I came into work just about an hour ago today because my wife gave birth to a baby boy yesterday afternoon. And I thank you. Thank you so much. Here's the thing. 2 years ago, I sat at this desk and I told a story about how my first son, Ash, was born, and how it was very dramatic in that my wife, her contractions started coming very quickly, very suddenly, and we were really worried that she was going to give birth in the Uber. And we just made it to the hospital with basically 20 minutes to spare. We'll move over that story. Because that's so normal compared to what happened yesterday. Wake up, totally normal Sunday, go to brunch. We go to the park. My wife starts feeling something. We've been talking to the doctor. We have a friend. Our friend Nilu is she's a doula. She's like a midwife. Talking to her. Everything sounds fine, but we're thinking today's the day. We're going to work our way to the hospital. But again, nothing. 20 minutes apart. Everything's fine. I'm feeding our son Ash lunch. My wife is upstairs with my mother-in-law, Joanne. And about 20 minutes into lunch, Joanne comes downstairs and just looks at me and says, "We have to go to the hospital now!" Which was not the calm I was looking for. It was like Bill Paxton and Aliens. It was like, "Game over, man!" I'm like, whoa. Because Joanne hadn't been there the last time. I'd been there, and so I kind of knew how dramatic it was last time, but I figured we had plenty of time to get to the hospital. So my sister-in-law, Ariel, she comes over to watch Ash, who's in his crib, taking a nap. Nilu joins us, and the four of us get in the elevator. My wife is in an intense amount of pain. It seems like now it's just one long contraction. We get into the lobby of our building. I have called an Uber. The Uber is outside, and we basically get to the steps of our building. We're in the lobby, and we're walking out the steps, and my wife just says, "I can't get in the car. I'm gonna have the baby right now. The baby is coming." And I'm trying to calm her down. I'm like, "Look, this is it again. I know, because I've been through exactly one birth." I'm like, "This happens all the time. You're feeling, it's not, trust me, I know when I'm talking." And but even our doula, Neela, was saying, like, "Look, you're gonna be fine." And she's like, my wife is saying, "The baby is coming. The baby is out." At which point, Nilu looked and then looked at me and said, "The baby is out." And I looked at my wife, and the only way I can describe how my wife looked was she looked like someone who was hiding a baby in a pair of sweatpants. It was like someone who was trying to like sneak a baby on a plane. And so then we bail, we're not gonna leave. So we walk back in and we had to decide, do we go into the lobby or back on the elevator? Those are terrible options when what you're looking for is a hospital. Because neither of them are very close to a hospital. So my wife basically decided for us, and she went and she lied down in our lobby, and we just sort of like created like a semicircle around her, and we undressed her, and the baby was just out. The head of the baby was out. I called 911. This is how fast it happened. I called 911, and over the course of a minute conversation, I basically said, "We're about to have a baby. We're having a baby. We had a baby." It was. I went from someone like calling in about emergency to just sharing good news with a stranger. He was like, "Yeah, it's a boy. Yeah, it's great. You probably got stuff to do." Anyway, so my wife basically takes our baby and puts him on her chest and is very incredibly calm for what she just went through. And then fire department, NYPD, the amount of people that were in our lobby was insane. What? You don't believe the entire fire department came into our lobby to help us deliver our baby? There they are. Look at that, New York's finest. Look at that cool dude. Knew to put my hand on her head. There's that. I did not. No one offered me oxygen, I should point out. And then I had to call our doctor. I'm calling our doctor. One of the firemen cut the umbilical cord. That, I guess, is something they also know how to do, which was incredible. Did a great job, because when we got to the hospital, I said, "How is that?" And they said, "You did a great job." And the other crazy thing was our neighbors, other people, people live in this building, and our doormen, who were amazing, they basically were stopping neighbors from walking into their own lobby because of what was happening. And the other thing was my wife was facing, her legs were facing the elevators. And thank God no one came down, because that would have made for so many awkward interactions for the rest of the time. Hey, I was there that day. Oh, yeah. And we have not, I should point out, we have not lived in this building for a long time at all. We just moved in at the end of last year. I'm so glad that we are already co-op approved, because I don't know. And these people, that I know a little bit from the elevator. I know a little bit from the lobby. I mean, I cannot tell you the kindness we experienced from them. People were running up to get us blankets. They were putting towels in their dryer, so we had warm towels to keep the baby warm. It was just this incredible outpouring of kindness from people we barely knew. I kept apologizing. I kept being like, I'm so sorry about this. And of course, everyone was saying, oh my God, don't worry, which was so sweet to do. And of course, there's no alternative. It's not like I would say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they would say, this isn't what the lobby's for. And then, EMTs came, and the EMTs got her onto the stretcher, and then we went out. There was an ambulance waiting for us, and we got into the ambulance, and as we were loading my wife into the ambulance, it's a one-way street, so there was one car waiting for us to load my wife into the ambulance, and again, I said to him, like, I'm so sorry. And he did this, which was the most New York thing. He just went, like, he was like, all right. Yeah, okay, I don't have a choice. And then we got to the hospital, and everything was fine. It was it's crazy. Obviously, anytime anyone has a baby, it's crazy. But there's just so many people. If you don't mind, I would like to thank our incredible doormen, Kevin and Ramon. I would like to thank the NYPD. I would like to thank the firemen from Engine 24. I would like to thank our incredible EMTs who showed up and got us to our hospital. Our doctor, Dr. Romoff, the incredible staff at Lenox Hill, the Uber driver who charged me. I mean, for real. Because we did you a huge favor. We're about to negative star your Uber. Also, I want to thank my sister-in-law, Ariel, who watched our son, Nilu, who I literally don't know what we would have done, what I would have done if and then I want to thank Joanne, my mother-in-law, who was incredible. She really was. I couldn't have done it without her. We named our son Axel. Here's a normal picture of Axel. There he is. We named him Axel because it's just a name we like, but I'm going to tell him it's because firemen were there when he was born. He's like, I don't like it. It's like, you could have been Hose. His middle name is Strahl, which is my mother-in-law, Joanne. That's her parents' name. That's her maiden name. And I never met my wife's grandparents, but I've heard so much about them. And they were Holocaust survivors who met the day after they were liberated. They met in a hospital in Austria. And days like this, you really, when someone is born, you just have such an appreciation for everyone in your lineage who lived so that you could have this moment. And so we're just so happy to give him this name for people who obviously had to work so hard to do that. And but of course, mostly, I just want to thank my wife who, obviously has to get an apartment closer to the hospital. But I mean, she's so amazing, and my kids, I haven't known them very long, but I can guarantee you, I'm gonna love them unconditionally forever. But just the speed in which she took this guy and had him on her, and I was watching him, like, oh my God, that kid's gonna be fine forever because of her. She's really amazing. I'm still getting choked up thinking about how brave I was. But obviously, I just want to thank my beautiful wife, Alexi, who is twice now, an incredible rock star with these incredible deliveries and stories. And thank you to everyone here for indulging me on this crazy story, and welcome Axel Stroll-Myers to the world. Like I said, it's so nice to be together again to continue this tradition. Another tradition is that every year we have dressed up first my son Ash, and then when he was born, my son Ash and Axel, and our dog Frisbee as turkeys. This is something we're gonna continue to do until they get too old, where they don't want to do it anymore?
Yeah, about 20, 22.
Yeah.
The dog has never really been into it.
No. And in fact, keep an eye out for a couple things. One, do you think the dog likes being in this video? And two, keep your eye out. If you peel your eyes very closely, there's sort of an Easter egg that maybe you will find. But again, watch very closely. Here are the boys in Frisbee as turkeys.
Buggle, 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 Thanksgiving. Yeah. Buggle, 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 happy Thanksgiving. 1, 2, 3, surprise.
We had another one, you guys. We had another one. This is 10 weeks ago. My wife gave birth to a baby girl, and I feel like it's only fitting for you to tell everybody what her name is.
Oh my gosh, her name is Adelaide, Addie, after my mother.
Yes.
So I knew, knowing Seth and Alexi, it had to start with an A, it had to be a cool name, and I know what family means to all of them. So I thought I pretty much had it, but I didn't know, and I didn't want to ask.
Yep.
And so you waited until we were on the vineyard, and
Yep.
it was a rainy day, and then you said, do you want to know the name? And I said, I guess so, yes. And then, of course, I burst into tears.
You burst into tears.
Yeah.
And now, Dad, had it been a boy, what was the name that you were arguing for?
Albert.
And do you want to explain what our hesitation would have been to naming a child Albert?
I've had 6 dogs named Albert.
Yeah.
I currently have Albert the Sixth. But I thought it would have been a good name because it would have been like, I've had 5 of my Alberts have died. They had good lives, don't worry.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be like Pinocchio, and all of a sudden the dog turns into a kid. They went and screwed it up having a girl.
Yeah. I'm so happy to have a girl. It was a dream come true to have a girl, but I only wish it had been a boy just for you to explain to my wife. It's like the dog came back as a kid.
Yeah. It could have gone better than we all think.
Now, Addie had a drink of choice. Posh, do you remember what Addie drank?
Kir Royale.
Yes, this is not the baby Addie, but the dear departed Addie. And so I would like to take a toast in memory of our grandmother and
My mother.
your mother, and Dad, your arch nemesis.
Daddy.
And if I could just interject something about Kirs. Now, it's white wine with creme de cassis.
Yeah.
The Royale is with champagne as well. But my mother had a flask that she carried with her at all times that had the creme de cassis, because she says it's such a ripoff when you go to restaurants. So a regular glass of white wine is maybe $6. Then they jack it up to 10
Right.
just by putting in the creme de cassis. And she says half the time it's too red, it's not red enough. She says, I'm just going to do my own. So she always took along this flask and would pour it. Now the thing is with creme de cassis, it's like a real gooey red,
very
like
thick.
very thick.
Yeah.
So one time the thing broke, the lid came off. We were in a store shopping, and I looked down, and it was like one of those straw rugs, and there was creme de. It looked like somebody had been murdered,
Yeah.
and there was just red all the way. And I looked at Mother, and she said, "We need to leave right now."
Yeah.
So we got out.
Yeah.
We got out.
The point of that story is she didn't only carry that flask when she went shopping
Yeah.
or to the restaurant.
It's very funny to
Always
think of carrying a flask full of creme de cassis. She was a very refined dirtbag.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
But it's very funny about Addie. First of all, here I do want to show how beautiful my grandmother was. There she is on her wedding day in the middle. Here she is right there, and that's you right there, Mom.
Yeah, that's with 5 of her 6 children.
Yep, you
That
had
was
one more baby after you.
one more baby boy.
And
yeah.
Addie was so refined and so classy, and her home was filled with beautiful antiques. I assumed until I was about 15 years old that I just assumed she was born in England.
Right.
And you want to tell everybody where she was born?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
But she was sent to an English boarding school.
Yes,
she went
she
to
had.
Malvern Girls College in England. And she did. She would pronounce laboratory and things like she had airs.
Yeah, she put on airs. Now, you, late in life, because she spent her later years in San Diego, you were in LA, you saw her a great deal more than I did. You were very close with her, but do you have a memory of, because she wasn't the warmest grandmother when we were young.
No, she didn't like kids that weren't her kids.
Yeah.
And I was her grandchild.
Right, which you feel like is close enough.
but not for Addie.
Yeah.
No.
And yeah, but she was like, you know, she would never say paper mache. She would say papier mache.
Right. And then
same
she'd
thing.
like,
And then have a nice thick drink of cassis.
Yeah.
But she, I mean, my favorite story, she was, you know, our grandmother. She was like 83, had gone through a couple husbands, and had gone out on a date with this guy. And he was also getting on in years, and he was dropping her off. And he asked her something. I forget how he phrased it. What did he ask her?
Would you touch it?
Would you touch it? She did not.
she did not.
But that gentleman would die 3 months later and leave his house to his housekeeper. And everyone was like, well, if you would have touched it, maybe free house.
It was a very loving group of people. How did your, what is your memory of Addie?
It was different for me. I'll tell you the first time I met Addie. Hillary and I met in college, and I must have been about 20. And my friend Denny Miller and I went up we lived in Pittsburgh. We went up to Marblehead, Massachusetts, this beautiful New England town with a big harbor full of sailboats. And they lived in a house that was built in the 1600s. And we come up there and, you know, to have a thing at the end of the summer, a little vacation. And so I think we got off to a bad start. You know, first of all, we mentioned, she said, how do you like Marblehead? We said, yeah, no rivers, no bridges. It's not Pittsburgh. Yeah, it's all right. So then we were sitting in the yard and
The garden.
it was the garden, pardon me.
If you say papier mache,
You say garden.
you say garden.
You
Yeah.
say garden. And I'll admit, we were 20 years old. I mean, I don't know what she was expecting. She wasn't expecting me. We, you know, as far as savoir-faire went to stay with the French, ours was only fair. And so we're sitting in the garden, and Hillary's grandfather came in, Addie's father. He was quite old at the time, and with a beret and some medals from World War I. And he sat down, we shook his hand, but we didn't get up. We should have got up. We were, you know, again, fair on the savoir-faire. And so after we had that little exchange, we went in to change for dinner, and Hillary came up and said, you have to get out. Addie threw me out the first day. I mean, didn't make it one day. She threw us out. And you saw the picture of her with her 5 of her 6 children, and she was the matriarch. She was, I would say she was like Catherine the Great, except Catherine the Great didn't have 6 kids. She was more like that guy, what's his name on Succession? Roy?
Logan Roy.
Logan Roy.
Yeah.
She was more like him.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, with a
Yeah.
lot of kids.
He's a loving.
Yeah. So she was the boss. But that was a rough start. But you know, Hillary and I have been married over 50 years, and so over time, you know, maybe 10, 12 years, things got better, and you know, the last 30 years were pretty good.
Yeah. I should note, the story about Addie's birth was a lot less dramatic than Axel, who was my middle son, who was famously born in a lobby. And our first son was almost born in an Uber, so Alexi was very aware that she has pretty fast labors, and so she decided to have it at home with a midwife. And my wife is she is an alpha. She likes to plan things. She put our 2 boys to bed. She looked at me. She said, my water broke. We had a midwife come to our home, and she gave birth in our bathtub at 10:30 at night, which was incredible. Like 3 pushes, and baby Addie was there. And it was amazing because, you go to a hospital, which we did for the first 2, and, it feels very medical. And this birth was very much, just felt like a miracle. And we had, Addie slept between us at night in bed. And then when the boys woke up in the morning, I got to go into their room and say, there's a surprise for you in Mom's bed. And here's the video of the first time they got to hold their sister.
Mommy,
You do photos.
get her
no
off.
video.
Get her off.
Take it off?
Mommy, what is that?
That's her belly button.
We took advantage of the pandemic and the fact that you weren't, people weren't seeing you out and about in the same way. And we decided, it's not really exciting. Like, I feel like a secret baby, has to be like 2 people that aren't together. Yeah, it's a little bit less exciting when you're like, we had a secret baby, and people are like, it's your 3rd baby. It's not a...
No, that's how I feel. And
Yeah.
I don't know why I've been keeping it a secret.
Right. Well, I appreciate you biting the bullet. And then, obviously, the fact that this one wasn't born in the lobby, didn't need to run out and tell everybody,
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
No Netflix special there.
No.
Boy.
I mean, it's heartbreaking. And, you don't want to blame her because she's just a baby.
Yeah.
But
But
Axel's already paid for college. Like, oh, she's got some work to do, Hey, everybody. Our next guests are my 3 children. Please welcome to the show Ash Myers, Axel Myers, and Adelaide Myers. It's so nice to have you guys here. So, you guys came in today. What did you do since you got here? Axel, why don't you tell everybody?
Took photos.
You took pictures. We took our Christmas card picture. Ash, what did you guys dress up like this year? It's always a themed photo.
Turkey.
What?
Turkey.
A turkey? Yeah, we dressed up like turkeys.
We were elf.
Elf from the movie Elf?
And I was alphabet.
You were Alphabet?
No. He wasn't.
What?
He wasn't.
All right, what were you?
She said I was elf.
You were Elf, and what
I'm a
were you?
turkey.
What were you, Addie?
Alphabet.
And Ash, what were you?
I was the narwhal.
You were the narwhal from the movie Elf. What was Addie really?
She was like my girlfriend.
Your girlfriend?
Yes, remember in the movie?
Uh-huh. She was? She was your girlfriend?
This is a tomato.
You were what?
Agnes is a tomato.
Okay, gotcha. Your cousin Agnes was a tomato? That's great.
Right,
Well, that's so fun. Well, how did you guys, did you get here by, in a car or a subway, Axel?
Car.
Gotcha. What about,
Subway.
you took the subway?
Daddy. We came at different times.
You came at different times? Addie, did you like the subway?
Yeah, the subway smelled like
That's really good. Hey, this is so fun. Ash and Axel, will you tell everybody where you went last weekend?
Pittsburgh!
You went to Pittsburgh, and what did you do in Pittsburgh?
Watch the Pittsburgh Steelers win!
We watched the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And they won!
But wait, there was one moment, there was a happy moment for me that then became sort of a sad moment, which is the Steelers intercepted the ball, and I was watching, they ran it all the way back for a touchdown, and so I was watching, I was so excited, and then I turned back, and both of you were crying. So, Ash, why don't you tell me what happened first?
So he smacked me in the face with his terrible towel.
He was waving a towel, and he hit you in the face, and so
then
what did you do?
I punched him here.
You punched him in the face?
And then I...
No. Addie, are your brothers silly?
Yeah. Poo poo.
Addie, which brother is sweetest to you? And which brother is roughest to you? But Addie, do you love your brothers?
I love this one, but not that one.
But well, now whose idea was it to have Addie? Who really wanted Addie? Yeah. Axel, do you want to just dance for a second? You feel like you want to dance for a second?
Dun, dun.
Sometimes you can just tell when Axel wants to dance, can't you? Do you guys have anything else exciting coming up you want to promote?
Thanksgiving!
Thanksgiving, very
No
good.
school!
All right, great.
No school for a week!
That's really exciting. Addie, what's your favorite thing to do in school?
Draw!
Draw. Axel, what's your favorite thing to do at school?
Definitely not read or write.
Okay. Great, so we have our two. And what about you, Ash?
Read!
Great. All right, wait, Addie, you gotta let him answer. You gotta let him answer. Oh, wait, Addie, real quick, what's your favorite TV show?
Peppa Pig.
All right. Addie, what's your favorite Peppa Pig episode?
Peppa Pig lost his walkie-talkie!
Wait, what happens in the episode?
He didn't leave his walkie-talkie, then
A walkie-talkie?
yeah, and then the parrot tell the Granny Pig, the grandma to help Grandpa Pig.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And now, I think, Axel, you want to dance one more time?
Yeah!
All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming. It was great to see you. Anything else you want to say, Ash?
Is my time over?
It's running out, yeah.
No! Wait. No! Wait. No!
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Myers Children. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with more Late Night.